So today I'm gonna demonstrate how to do coloring in Photoshop. So as usual, we're gonna make a file, new, print, and then A4 size, and make sure the resolution is not too big, so you can save your space on your computer, and then drag your scan file and then activate the layer. Then if you see there is a small gray area there, make a right click and then rasterize layer. And then I want to make sure that my pencil is bold enough, so I will double the layer of the scan illustration. And then after that I put it on multiply so it will be more bold. And then make a right click and merge the layer together so it will become one layer. And then click image adjustment, and then the top three will be the main tool for brightness and contrast, so we can adjust the lightness. Then after you achieve the brightness you need, sometimes we have to check on the image. When we scan an image, sometimes it turns into a different color. So I always like to go to image and then black and white to make sure it doesn't have any weird color on it. And then we can use the burn effect. The burn tool will help us to make the lines darker again. If you have any missing lines, you can use a clone stamp. So click Alt on your keyboard on where you want to copy, and then after that you click on the hole that you need to cover. Then we will delete the background using a magic eraser tools, and you can change the tolerance according to what we need. And to make sure that the paper is clean enough and we have no more access left on the background, we can use Lasso Tool. So start following the pose, and after that you will go back to the point where you started, and then make a right click, select inverse, and delete the layer so there will be no more access on the background. Then don't forget to check whether you accidentally delete some part that you don't want to delete. So what happened here, if I zoom in, I deleted the right hair part. So to cover it, I make it using a lasso tool and a new layer, adding white color using the paint bucket at the back of the hair, and then make sure that you merge the layer together. Now the background is clear, we can make a shadow. So on the layer of the illustration, click FX and drop shadow, and here you can adjust the angle, adjust the thickness of the shadow or the spread. But if you're not sure if you want to use the background shadow, you can always turn off on the layer so it won't appear. And then now we can start to color the face, make a new layer, and then using a pen tool and make sure it's pot, and then following the face using the pen tool. And after you reach the end, make a right click, make selection, and then make sure it's 0. And then use the brush to color, pick the right skin colors you want, and use the soft brush, pick this soft rounded brush, and then make sure that the opacity is not strong enough, so make it light below 100%. Then start to color it and build it little by little, and then make sure it's on multiply layer so it doesn't cover the lines of the sketch. And if you make a mistake, you don't have to worry, because there is a thing called history that you can find on the window. So you can always go back to the steps you want, but still it's not covered the whole. There is a limit on the steps where you want to go back on the history. So when you color the face, the smaller part that you color, you have to make the brush size smaller. That way it will be more easier and more precise as well. And now I'm adding more color to the lips, and after that we can continue the same way on the neck, also on the leg area. And after coloring the skin, we can start to color the hair. You can make a new layer for the hair, and then as usual we will use the pen tool pad to make the area of the hairlines, and then we can later color them with the brush. And also use the different size of brush. For example, if you want to get the hairline detail, so use the smaller brush to get the lines. And to make the hairlines doesn't look flat, you can also add a different color on a different layer, so mixing color will be great for the hairlines. And because the other side of the hair looks pretty much the same, I'm just gonna copy with the Alt from the left to the right, and then make a right click, flip it, and use the warp to make the hair fitted to the other side. And then if it's not clean enough, or if it still has an excess to it, you can always delay it using a pen tool or a lasso tool or even an eraser. So basically the wrap tool is really helpful, and you will use this kind of tools pretty much most of the time. So here I'm using the pen tool again to delete the overlapping hairlines, and after that we can start to color the head. And I'm gonna use a rattan texture for the head, and make sure that you have a flat image texture of rattan so you can place it on the head easily. So here I'm cropping the area that I need, and then I will place it to the illustration part, and then I will resize this from the side using a Ctrl T or Command T, and then I will make the rattan texture bigger by cloning the layer, and then using the eraser I will delete some part and make sure the eraser is not 100% so I can get a seamless pattern at the end. And after that, don't forget to merge the layers all together so you will have one big texture that we can apply. And make sure that you keep extra copy on another layer because you don't want to do it all over again. So always put extra copy every time you make a new texture. Now I try to place it and then use a warp to make it more natural on the head, following the head silhouette. Then use the pen tool again on the pad, and then following the angle of the head, and make a right click and then select inverse and delete. And then you will do the same on the top of the head. And after that we can arrange the shadow or the shading of the head using a tool called burn tool. Make sure the exposure on the top is not too high so it won't look too burnt. And after that you can do the same on the clothes using a clothes texture. And then later, after you're finishing with the head, you can merge the layer together between the top and the bottom. So to change color, basically you have to click hue saturation, and hue is for the color, saturation is to make it more bold, and you can adjust it according to your preference. And now we can start to color the clothes. We can drag the actual texture and make sure it's a flat texture, and then drag it here, and we can add it the same way like we did with the head. So just like what we did on the rattan, we clone the fabric, and the way we make it bigger is by merging it together. Later we will apply the texture one by one to the clothes. So here I'm gonna adjust the color into off-white color. So as usual, we put adjustment, hue saturation, and then I add colorize here because I want to make it off-white. And then I'm just gonna change and try to find the similar color that I need. And after I get the right color, I press OK. And then later I can add it with brightness contrast after finishing the hue saturation. And because it's too yellow for an off-white color, so the brightness contrast will help. And later maybe we can also add dodge tool as a highlighter for the fabric effect. So now we'll add the fabric for the top blouse, and we put it at multiply. And then even though it's the whole thing will be filled with the same texture, but we still need to cut it one by one. For example, the sleeve on its own, the bodies, and also the lapel. So basically the point of cutting it one by one is to make us easier when we have to do the shading details or the highlighting details of the clothes. And so it is always good to separate the layers, so make sure you cut it each part separately, and then later you have to add the shading separately as well. And after you finish the detail of the shading or the highlighted part, then you can put all the layers together so all the clothes will be in the same or one layer only. So now we can start applying a dodge, which is a highlighter tools on the Photoshop. And since it is a shiny fabric, you can add the brightness contrast more to make a shiny or bright effect. Do the same of each part of the clothes, and then later after you reach the shiny effect, and then you can maybe add more shading, for example under the collar or near the waistline, so anywhere that looks darker. And after you add enough shading, you can put all the layer together and then merge the layer because you want the clothes to be in one layer. And after merge the layer, make sure that you put the layer back into multiply, because when you merge all the layers together, it will automatically change to a normal layer. And after completing the top, you can start to do the leather glove and also shoes. And I only have a gray color leather here, so I can just pick the available color, because later I can just change the gray into black or any color that I need to change. So as usual, we're gonna make the leather texture bigger, compiling or cloning it, and make sure that you erase some part to make it more seamless and neat. So here, because the area that we need to cover is not that big, only clothes and shoes, so we don't really have to make it as big as before. And after that, click image adjustment and hue saturation, make the lightness down so we can achieve black color. And then if it's not enough, we can add brightness contrast to achieve the right black color leather. And here I even add burn tool on the leather texture to make the color looks more flat. Then start to place the black leather on top of the gloves and then cut it with the pen tool and then erase the outer part. And don't forget to make a right click and then click warp to adjust the shape if it wasn't fit enough. And then do the same to the other side of the gloves and also on the shoes. And don't forget to give highlight and also shading details using the burn tool and as well as the dodge tool. And you can always change the exposure on the top to make it more darker or to even make it more lighter, so we can always adjust the size. And then try to think of which part to add the shading or the highlight. For example, on the shoes, we will add a little highlight at the pointy part of the shoe as if there is a light reflected. And now the last part to be color will be the skirt, so I'm using the same texture as before, so I'm just gonna need to change the fabric color using hue saturations. And because I want to make it black, I'm just gonna put the lightness down, and then the black color itself could have a little color of blue or red. It's according to the type of black that we want. And then put it on top of the skirt and then use the warp tool, so following the angle of the pleated skirt. And because there is no prints on this skirt, so it might doesn't seems to affect that much, but if there is any pattern on it, it's really important to add this warp tool effect on the skirt. So after the wrap, use the pen tool, the pad again, and then try to cut the whole thing and following the silhouette of the skirt. And after that, we're gonna delete the outer part. Then going back to Ctrl T and Command T and make the warp again if we don't cut the fabric properly. Then again, coming back to the burn tool and also the dodge tool to get the effect of the pleated skirt. So this is supposed to be a shiny satin skirt, so we will add a lot of highlights on the pleated area. So little by little, try to build the depth of the pleated effect. And also with the hue saturation, I want to change the black into a blue shade black color. And I strongly suggest you to have a mouse or a Wacom pen, because the whole process is quite tiring if you're just using a trackpad. And now slowly start to build the shiny effect using a dodge tool and also a burn tool, and just change the exposure as we need to. And after that, we can adjust with the brightness contrast if you would like to make it more strong or more visible. Then after completing the coloring, I just want to make my layer more neat. So I will merge some layers that needs to be merged, and also I will rename the layer to make it more easy for me when I need to go back and change something. So it's always good to make a proper layer every time we make any project. So now I will go back to my drop shadow, which is on the bottom of the layer, the FX. So I will adjust the opacity of my shadow. I would like to make it lighter. And after that, we will focusing on the background. And the final things that we have to do here is making a background for this illustration. So everyone will have a different background, and everything will be depend on the character of the illustration that we have here. So a background that we will make is supposed to be supporting the illustration, and it shouldn't be too striking or overlapping or overpowering the illustration, so we still have to focus on the illustration itself. So here I'm just adding a concrete texture as the background, and then I have 2 layers of the concrete, and I will merge it together to make it easier for me. And to merge is by clicking Command E or Control E, or make a right click and then merge layers. Then I will add the same texture for the floor, and then later I will make a shading as if there is a shadow of her standing on the floor. So again, we will use the burn tool, and then with a lighter exposure, then we can start to have a little shadow near her feet and also on the floor. And we just have to build it and make an interesting background, yet it shouldn't be overpowering the illustration itself. So basically we just have to be creative with it. And please don't add just a simple picture as a background without editing it, because it will look as if we only copy paste of someone else's images or picture. So make sure that you edit your own background and make an interesting one. So I will add more shading on the backdrop, and after that we can have a simple graphic background, so the background won't look too flat or too boring. So I'm adding a new layer, and then I will make a box using a rectangular tool, and after that I will use the paint bucket and then add a white color on it. Then I'll make the white background a bit blended with the back part by put the opacity lower so it looks like a bit transparent. And then using the eraser tool, the soft rounded one, and using a lighter opacity, I'm gonna erase some part of the white background, so as if like a gradation from left to right, from white to completely transparent. So I'm just trying to make it more interesting by doing this. And after this, I think our background is complete, and because I don't want to make it more complicated or looks too much. So that's basically the tricks on how to make an interesting background, and also how to color in Photoshop using fabric texture. I hope this video helped us to more understand about Photoshop software for fashion illustration.